You've been lied to for most of your life, not by one person, not by one institution, but by the entire system that raised you. From childhood, you were taught a set of rules that sounded moral, reasonable, and civilized on the surface. Rules that felt safe. Rules that promised peace, harmony, and acceptance. You were told that if you are nice, people will respect you. You were told that if you are honest, people will trust you. You were told that if you explain yourself clearly, misunderstandings will disappear. You were told that kindness wins. You were told that transparency builds connection. You were told that being open makes you strong. And you believed it. Because why wouldn't you? These rules were taught by parents, teachers, movies, motivational speakers, and authority figures who claim to know how the world works. But look at your life honestly. Where has that belief system actually gotten you? Ignored, overlooked, talked over, taken for granted, disrespected by people who smile to your face, used by people who never plan to give you anything back. And the worst part, you probably think it's your fault. You think maybe you weren't, and you say no, maybe you weren't patient enough. Maybe you didn't explain yourself well enough. Maybe if you had just been calmer, kinder, clearer, people would have understood. That belief, that you are the problem, is the final layer of the lie, because the truth is brutal, uncomfortable, and rarely spoken out loud. You weren't failing at the rules. The rules were designed to fail you. They were never meant to make you powerful. They were meant to make you manageable. Niceness, as society teaches it, is not about morality. It's about predictability. A nice person is emotionally available. A nice person explains themselves. A nice person avoids conflict. A nice person gives second chances. A nice person absorbs disrespect quietly. And predictable people are easy to control. When others know exactly how you will react, they stop respecting you. When they know you'll forgive, they push boundaries. When they know you'll explain, they provoke you. When they know you fear confrontation, they exploit it. This is not because people are evil. It's because human psychology is opportunistic by nature. Humans test limits instinctively. We probe for weakness subconsciously. We adjust our behavior based on consequences, or the lack of them. If disrespect costs nothing, it becomes normal. And niceness removes consequences. Look around. Who gets interrupted the most? Who gets their time wasted? Who gets last-minute cancellations? Who gets dumped with extra work? Who gets emotionally unloaded on? It's rarely the aggressive person. It's rarely the quiet, controlled one. It's the nice one. The one who listens. The one who understands.
The one who gives the benefit of the doubt. The one who explains instead of exits. And society praises this behavior while quietly punishing it. You're told, be the bigger person. Don't take it personally. They didn't mean it that way. Just communicate. What they never tell you is that communication without leverage is submission. Respect does not come from being understood. Respect comes from being unavoidable. The people who command respect are not the most emotional. They are not the most expressive. They are not the most transparent. They are the least readable. They don't rush to explain. They don't defend themselves emotionally. They don't seek agreement. They don't try to be liked. And because of that, people move differently around them. People pause before speaking. People choose their words carefully. People hesitate before crossing lines. Not because those people are cruel, but because they are opaque. Opacity creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates caution. Caution creates respect. This is the psychological law no one teaches you. Every time you explain how someone hurt you, you are giving them a blueprint. You are telling them, this is where I'm sensitive. This is what affects me. This is how you can get a reaction. And once someone knows how to get a reaction, they control the interaction. Emotional transparency feels mature, but it is strategically disastrous in a world that rewards leverage. When you explain, you reveal emotional investment, signal insecurity, ask for validation, and lower your position. Power does not argue for itself. Power does not justify itself. Power does not beg to be understood. Power acts, and lets silence do the rest. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something centuries ago that still terrifies people today. Humans do not treat you based on what you deserve. They treat you based on what they believe they can get away with. That single insight explains most social dynamics. People who are endlessly forgiving invite repeated offenses. People who over-explain invite interrogation. People who react emotionally invite manipulation. Not because others hate you, but because you've trained them that it's safe. And once someone categorizes you as safe to disrespect, it is almost impossible to undo without radical behavioral change. The world does not reward goodness. It rewards perceived strength. Mystery signals depth. Silence signals control. Emotional restraint signals authority. When people cannot read you, they project competence onto you, assume calculation, and fear hidden consequences. When people can read you completely, they feel superior, feel safe exploiting you, and stop taking you seriously. This is why the quietest person in the room often holds the most power. Not because they are smarter, not because they are stronger, but because they are unavailable.
This is the crossroads where most people fail. Being liked versus being respected. Being liked feels good. Being respected feels dangerous. Being liked requires openness. Being respected requires boundaries. Being liked makes people comfortable. Being respected makes people careful. You can be loved and powerless, or respected and free. Rarelibot. Rarelibot. The moment you choose respect, you will be misunderstood. The moment you choose power, you will lose approval. The moment you stop explaining, people will accuse you of being cold. That discomfort is the price of authority. The transformation does not start with aggression. It starts with withdrawal. You stop narrating your thoughts. You stop explaining your motives. You stop defending your choices. You let people wonder. Wonder creates tension. Tension creates awareness. Awareness creates respect. You become a closed system. Your emotions stay internal. Your decisions stand without justification. Your reactions slow down. You don't rush to respond. You don't rush to fix misunderstandings. You don't rush to smooth discomfort. You let silence work. Silence unsettles people. It forces them to confront their own thoughts. It removes their control over the interaction. It shifts the psychological weight onto them. When you stop reacting, others start revealing. They talk more. They explain themselves. They overcompensate. And in that imbalance, power shifts quietly. You are no longer performing. You are observing. Power has a price. You will not be understood by everyone. You will not be liked by everyone. You will lose people who benefited from your openness. But what you gain is something most people never experience. Freedom from emotional manipulation. Freedom from validation seeking. Freedom from being taken lightly. You stop being an option. You become a presence. Now that you understand why silence and unreadability create respect, it's time to explore strategic unpredictability. Many people think being unreadable is enough, but predictability hides in subtler ways. You might avoid explaining yourself, but if every reaction is always the same, cold, distant, emotionless, you've become predictable in a new dimension. Predictability, even under a mask of coldness, invites others to anticipate and plan around you. Real power is not consistent coldness. Real power is dynamic unpredictability. Unpredictability is the subtle art of keeping people off balance. It is not about chaos or instability. It is about control through variance. Some days, you are warm, attentive, engaging, accessible. People relax, think they've earned your trust, and let their guard down. And then, without warning, you withdraw. You go silent, you become distant. The same behaviors that were acceptable yesterday are unacceptable today. People scramble to recalibrate. They question what they said, how they acted, and where the invisible boundaries now exist. That recalibration is power. It forces attention. It commands respect. It creates a psychological weight that cannot be ignored. This unpredictability should feel natural, effortless, not forced. You are not flipping moods randomly. You are responding strategically. Sometimes you forgive immediately. Sometimes you hold grudges indefinitely. Sometimes you show patience. Sometimes you disappear without a word. Each action is calculated but never explained. The key is that the logic behind your actions is visible only to you. To others, you are an enigma. To others, you are a force they cannot read, predict, or control. That sense of unknown is intoxicating, and it generates the kind of respect that explanation can never buy. Now, let's explore the danger of over-explaining. This is where most people sabotage themselves without realizing it. Someone questions your decision or challenges your choice, and you feel the urge to justify, defend, clarify, and make them understand. That urge is fatal to power. Every explanation is a gift. Every justification is a blueprint. You are handing others the exact tools they need to manipulate, undermine, or dismiss you. When you explain yourself emotionally, you are teaching others how to control your reactions, how to anticipate your moves, and where to strike. True power never provides maps for manipulation. True power exists in mystery, in opacity, in quiet authority. Think about it. When you stop explaining, something remarkable happens. People stop questioning. There is nothing to attack. There are no weak points to exploit. Your decision stands as an immovable truth. Their only choice is to accept it or walk away. And when acceptance is the only option, respect is born. Machiavelli described this centuries ago. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Recognize when people are trying to trap you emotionally. Refuse to engage. Be the lion. Decide. Act. And then stay silent. The more you resist over-explaining, the more untouchable you become. Next comes the wolf versus dog metaphor, a lesson in energy, behavior, and survival. Imagine a dog. Loyal, friendly, emotional, reactive. The dog is loved, fed, and praised. But the dog is controlled, dependent, and predictable. It reacts to every stimulus, seeks approval constantly, and exists at the mercy of external forces. Now imagine a wolf. Silent, observant, controlled, unreadable. The wolf does not react to every provocation. It does not seek validation. It waits, watches, calculates, and strikes only when necessary. The wolf may not be loved, may not be liked, but it is respected. Its freedom is earned through presence alone, not approval. The wolf is a living embodiment of strategic power, feared, cautious, and untouchable.
Choosing to be a wolf is choosing a life of psychological independence. You stop seeking approval. You stop broadcasting your emotional state. You stop explaining every action. You stop giving others leverage. You become selective about who sees your real self. You invest your energy only where it matters. And in that selectivity lies your power. You will lose some people along the way. That's expected. The wolf is not liked by everyone, but no one takes it lightly. Your social circle shrinks, but the quality of your influence skyrockets. You become a presence, not a resource. But raw unpredictability without balance can be dangerous. People often mistake fear alone for power. They think coldness, intimidation, or aggression is enough. It isn't. Fear without respect is unstable. It creates resentment, rebellion, and eventual retaliation. Conversely, respect without fear is weak. People admire you, but they push boundaries, take liberties, and exploit kindness. True power exists in the balance of fear and respect. You want people to value your presence while simultaneously understanding there are consequences for overstepping boundaries. This balance creates untouchable authority. It's subtle, quiet, but absolute. Building this balance starts with competence and value. Be someone who cannot easily be replaced. Demonstrate skills, integrity, and reliability. Show others that having access to you is a privilege, not a given. Then add the fear element, not through threats or drama, but through consequences. When someone crosses your line, you withdraw decisively, calmly, and without explanation. The absence is louder than any words. It communicates boundaries more clearly than any lecture ever could. People internalize the message quickly. Crossing you comes at a cost. When this combination is maintained consistently, respect is no longer optional. It's instinctive. Strategic withdrawal is not cruelty. It is protection. It is control. It is the cessation of giving others permission to manipulate your emotional state. The loud, emotional, and reactive are always noticed first, but they are also used first. The silent, unreadable, and unpredictable are never taken for granted. Machiavelli ruled through perception, not force. And now so can you. When you stop explaining, when you start observing, when you vary your presence strategically, you move through the world as a force, not a victim. Your silence speaks. Your withdrawal communicates. Your unpredictability commands attention and caution. This is the world of psychological authority. This is the domain of the wolf. You will not be understood by everyone, but you will be respected. You will not be liked by all, but you will be feared just enough to ensure you are never crossed. The wolf exists on its own terms, observes quietly, acts decisively, and preserves energy for matters that matter. You will become untouchable not through aggression or intimidation, but through strategic control of perception, emotional restraint, and unpredictability. Your presence becomes weighty. Your absence becomes noticeable. Your silence becomes powerful. Now that you've embraced silence, unpredictability, and the wolf mentality, it's time to understand the next level of psychological mastery. Controlling perception without ever appearing to control. Most people make the mistake of trying to dominate through force, authority, or overt intimidation. That works temporarily, but it's brittle. True influence is invisible. It's subtle. It's the art of making people believe they are acting freely while their choices have already been framed by your strategic presence. The silent observer, the unreadable force, and the unpredictable presence all converge to create this effect. Consider this. When people can predict your emotional reactions, they know how to manipulate you. When they understand your patterns, they know when to push, when to argue, when to bend your will. But when you are strategically unreadable, unpredictable, and controlled, every action you take is a signal they cannot decode. That ambiguity forces them into overthinking. Every interaction with you becomes a mental exercise. Every word they speak is measured against a backdrop of uncertainty. And while they are trapped in analysis, you are calm, present, and fully in control. This is leverage. This is Machiavellian power in practice. Next is the art of selective engagement. Engagement is not generosity. It is currency. Every time you interact, you are spending attention and energy that has intrinsic value. Most people give this away freely, but the truly powerful guard it jealously. They engage on their own terms. They respond when they choose, ignore when they choose, and speak when it serves their purpose. When people receive your attention, it becomes meaningful. When they are ignored, it creates tension, curiosity, and respect. The energy you give is a tool. The silence you keep is a weapon. Learning when to deploy. Each is the difference between being a person people use and a force people respect. Another critical element is emotional neutrality. This is not indifference, but rather control over what emotions are broadcasted. When provoked, the average person reacts. Anger, frustration, defensiveness, explanation. Each reaction is a clue. Each reaction is a vulnerability. You, however, maintain calm. You measure responses. You display composure. Your internal state is invisible. Your external state is deliberate. The result? People cannot gauge your emotional boundaries, and uncertainty always produces caution. When they cannot predict how you feel or how you will act, they overestimate your capabilities, and that overestimation translates into respect and fear. Now let's explore strategic scarcity, a principle most people overlook. Scarcity is one of the most powerful psychological tools in existence. When something is abundant, it is undervalued. When something is rare, it is coveted. Apply this to your time, attention, and emotional energy. Be selectively present. Be hard to reach. Be difficult to pin down. Not absent for no reason, but absent in a calculated way. When people understand that access to you is not guaranteed, that your energy is finite, they value every interaction exponentially more. Scarcity amplifies respect. Scarcity creates leverage. Scarcity turns your presence into a commodity that others are careful not to squander. Next, the principle of invisible consequences. People respect rules when violations carry consequences. But fear is amplified when those consequences are invisible and unpredictable. Most people announce boundaries, post rules, or threaten repercussions openly, but this is weak power. The truly dominant enforce boundaries without notification, without drama, without explanation. Someone crosses the line, and suddenly they experience loss, withdrawal, disengagement, or permanent removal. No argument, no lecture. The consequences are quiet but undeniable. People internalize this immediately. Crossing you is risky. Violating your space, your energy, or your trust is inherently dangerous. That invisible threat produces compliance, respect, and attention. Now let's talk about perception management. Machiavelli famously said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This is central to untouchable influence. You are not aiming to manipulate facts or reality. You are aiming to control what people see, interpret, and remember. Your actions, presence, and even absence are curated signals. You project calm, control, competence, and authority. You are consistent in standards but variable in reactions. People cannot map your behavior, predict your next move, or manipulate your perception. They fill the blanks with assumptions, usually assuming you are more capable, more powerful, and more dangerous than reality might suggest. This projection works in your favor. People behave differently around you because they believe they cannot risk miscalculating your power. At this stage, you should also understand the illusion of generosity. Power is amplified when it appears voluntary. Let people think you are giving, forgiving, or engaging out of goodwill, but when in reality it is strategic. You maintain control by deciding who receives access, attention, or information. Give to those who align with your interests. Withdraw from those who challenge or disrespect you. Every interaction is calculated. Your generosity is never a weakness. It is a tool of influence and leverage. Those who benefit become loyal. Those who challenge become cautious, and you remain untouchable.
Finally, we reach the principle of long-game dominance. Short-term wins are fleeting. True power manifests over time through consistency and strategic behavior, unpredictability in response, and selective engagement. You are not seeking approval today, admiration tomorrow, or validation in the next interaction. You are creating a cumulative psychological impact. Every moment of silence, every withheld explanation, every calculated withdrawal, every controlled display of emotion compounds. People remember patterns over time. And when those patterns reveal unreadable, untouchable authority, you become an almost mythic figure in their perception. That long-game dominance is untouchable power in its purest form. At these days, you are no longer learning how to react. You are learning how to architect reality around you. This is where most people fail, because they believe power is something you express. In truth, power is something others feel in your presence without being able to explain why. You don't dominate conversations. You don't raise your voice. You don't assert authority verbally. You allow the room to adjust to you. Your calm becomes the baseline. Your silence becomes the reference point. Others unconsciously mirror your energy, slow their speech, measure their words, and check themselves before acting. That invisible adjustment is dominance without effort. Now we enter the domain of group psychology, where influence multiplies exponentially. One-on-one power is useful, but group influence is permanent. In any group, hierarchy forms automatically. Someone leads, someone follows, and most people hover in the middle, unsure. Your objective is not to announce leadership, but to occupy the psychological center. You do this by speaking less than others, but saying more when you do speak. Your words land with weight because they are rare. When everyone talks, no one listens. When one person waits, observes, and then speaks precisely, the group recalibrates around them. Silence, once again, becomes your amplifier. Another advanced principle is emotional gravity. People are drawn to those who feel emotionally stable and internally complete. Neediness repels. Oversharing repels. Validation-seeking repels. When you appear self-contained, emotionally sufficient without external approval, others gravitate toward you instinctively. They seek your reaction. They want your acknowledgement. They measure themselves against your response. Emotional gravity is not charisma. It is self-possession. The less you chase attention, the more attention chases you. This is not coincidence. It is psychology. Now let's talk about controlling narratives without controlling speech. Most people attempt to shape narratives by talking more, explaining more, and correcting more. This backfires. The more you try to control the story verbally, the more you reveal insecurity. Instead, you allow others to speculate. You let gaps exist. You let silence invite interpretation. Humans hate uncertainty, so they fill the gaps themselves. And here's the key. People almost always assume competence, authority, or danger when faced with silence paired with calm confidence. You don't need to correct misunderstandings unless they harm your long-term goals. Ambiguity works in your favor. As your presence grows heavier, you must master delayed reaction dominance. When something happens, an insult, a challenge, a provocation, the weak react instantly. The powerful pause. That pause is not hesitation. It is control. It forces the other person into psychological discomfort. They wonder if they crossed a line. They replay their words. They imagine consequences. By the time you respond, the battle is already won. Your reaction, when it finally comes, is measured, decisive, and minimal. The delay amplifies impact far more than immediate retaliation ever could. Next comes social mirroring and contrast. When you subtly mirror the calm, pace, and tone of a room, people feel safe around you. When you break that pattern selectively by withdrawing, becoming quieter, or suddenly disengaging, it creates contrast. That contrast commands attention. People notice absence far more than presence. They feel the shift. They wonder what changed. Contrast is how you train people emotionally without ever saying a word. You teach them that access to your energy depends on alignment, respect, and awareness. Another crucial element is non-reactive boundary enforcement. Boundaries are not rules you announce. They are behaviors you enforce. When someone violates your space, your time, or your values, you do not argue. You do not explain. You do not warn repeatedly. You adjust your behavior. You reduce access. You become unavailable. This quiet enforcement is devastatingly effective because it leaves no opening for debate. People cannot negotiate with silence. They cannot manipulate absence. They can only adapt or lose access entirely. At this level, you begin to understand social leverage. You are no longer seeking fairness. You are seeking positioning. Who speaks when you speak? Who stops talking when you enter the room? Who watches your reaction before forming their own opinion? These are signals of leverage. You do not force these dynamics. You allow them to form naturally through consistency, emotional control, and selective engagement. Over time, people instinctively defer to you, not because you demand it, but because their nervous system recognizes authority. Now we address the final trap, ego exposure. Many people reach this level of control and destroy it by trying to prove their power. They flex. They dominate openly. They seek recognition. This collapses the mystique instantly. True power is quiet. It doesn't need validation. The moment you feel the urge to show dominance,
you've already lost it. The strongest position is the one that doesn't need defending. The wolf doesn't announce itself. Its presence is enough. By now, your identity has shifted. You are no longer reacting to the world. The world reacts to you. You no longer chase respect. Respect emerges naturally. You no longer explain, your actions speak. You operate on a higher psychological plane, where influence is invisible, dominance is subtle, and control is internal. This is not manipulation for chaos. This is mastery for stability. You become a fixed point in an unstable environment. People orbit you, adjust to you, and think twice before crossing you. Now that you understand the foundation, silence, unreadability, unpredictability, strategic withdrawal, and the wolf mindset, it's time to apply these principles in the real world. Theory alone changes nothing. Mastery is shown in interactions, decisions, and behavior. Start with your work environment. Observe who holds influence, who speaks the most, who reacts emotionally, and who is truly respected versus merely liked. Notice patterns. The loudest voices often get noticed temporarily, but the quiet ones shape decisions behind the scenes. This is where you begin inserting yourself strategically. Do not compete in volume. Compete in presence. Speak less, act deliberately, let your words carry weight. Make decisions visible but infrequent. Let your colleagues, your team, or even your boss feel your impact without overexposing your intentions. In social circles, the dynamics are the same but amplified. People test boundaries constantly. Friends, acquaintances, and family members probe to see who is predictable, who reacts, who can be manipulated. Your goal is not to alienate, but to establish emotional gravity. Be the person whose presence is noticed even when quiet. Let others reveal themselves through chatter, gossip, or unnecessary explanations while you collect information silently. Every detail you absorb is power. Every reaction you observe is insight. Then, when necessary, deploy small, precise actions that shift the balance in your favor without needing to explain yourself. In social mastery, invisibility and influence are the same thing. Enemies and rivals operate differently. Here, strategic unpredictability becomes essential. When someone attempts to undermine you, provoke you, or compete with you, resist the urge to react immediately. Observe. Collect intelligence. Predict patterns. Then respond in ways they cannot anticipate, creating the psychological effect of being untouchable and omniscient. This is the difference between being feared and being vulnerable. Your reactions are no longer emotional. They are calculated instruments. Silence and absence are your first weapons. Your actions, when deployed, are your second. By the time your rival realizes the effect, it is already too late. Financial negotiations, business deals, and career moves are another layer where these principles shine. Most people weaken themselves through over-explaining, rushing decisions, or seeking approval from others. Stop doing that. Enter every negotiation with clarity of purpose, minimal disclosure, and unwavering calm. Your confidence will make others adjust automatically. They will try to second-guess you. They will offer concessions simply because they cannot read you. By revealing only what is necessary, you leverage scarcity. Scarcity of information creates value, respect, and control. This is the core of psychological dominance in competitive environments. Romantic and personal relationships are no exception. People often fall into patterns of over-explaining, seeking validation, or justifying their choices. The strong, unreadable individual flips this dynamic. You do not apologize for existence. You do not beg for understanding. You do not broadcast your emotional state constantly. Instead, you create psychological space, allowing others to earn access, respect, and intimacy on your terms. This is not cruelty. It is value preservation. People begin to measure themselves against you, not the other way around. They value what is scarce: your time, your attention, your authentic presence. And when they realize crossing boundaries has consequences, respect becomes automatic. Now let's discuss long-term sustainability of power. Many people gain temporary influence, but lose it because they burn themselves out emotionally or reveal too much over time. The key is consistency without predictability. You maintain unreadability, silence, and strategic unpredictability, but you also maintain internal alignment. Your goals, values, and priorities are constant. Your methods shift subtly based on context. You never overreact. You never need to broadcast dominance. You exist as a fixed point in the psychological landscape. People adjust to you naturally. You are the constant variable in a world of chaos, and that is why you are respected and feared simultaneously. Finally, understand the ethical dimension. Power is neutral. It is neither inherently good nor evil. Your mastery of influence and control is most effective when used strategically, not vindictively. You do not need to humiliate or destroy. You do not need to manipulate unnecessarily. The true expert moves subtly, preserves dignity, and achieves results without exposure. Your power becomes a force of consequence, not reaction. People know the rules without you having to spell them out. Respect, fear, and influence flow naturally from your presence. You become the standard by which others measure themselves, not because you demand it, but because your behavior makes the standard undeniable. At this stage, you have completed the transition from reactive individual to unreadable force.
You understand the psychology of respect, the mechanics of influence, and the subtle strategies of dominance. You know the value of silence, unpredictability, and emotional control. You know how to leverage scarcity, contrast, and boundary enforcement. You now exist as a presence that shapes the environment around you effortlessly, without needing to explain, justify, or seek validation. This is untouchable power. This is mastery in the real world. This is how the quiet, controlled, and mysterious achieve more in life than the loud, overexposed, and desperate ever will. At this level, power is no longer something you perform. It becomes something you embody, something that radiates quietly without conscious effort. This is where most people fail because they focus on external tactics, while neglecting the internal structure required to sustain dominance long-term. Without inner psychological armor, even the strongest external posture eventually cracks. Emotional exhaustion, self-doubt, and overexposure begin to erode control. True mastery begins inside, where reactions are dissolved before they ever reach the surface. The first layer of this armor is emotional detachment without emotional numbness. You still feel deeply, but you no longer allow feelings to command behavior. Anger is observed, not acted upon. Anxiety is acknowledged, not obeyed. Excitement is controlled, not broadcasted. When emotions no longer dictate action, people lose their primary method of influence over you. Provocation fails. Guilt loses power. Manipulation collapses. Others sense this immediately, even if they cannot articulate it. A person who cannot be emotionally hijacked is automatically respected, often feared, and rarely challenged. Next comes identity independence, one of the most dangerous traits you can develop. When your sense of self is no longer tied to approval, status, relationships, or outcomes, you become psychologically untouchable. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't destabilize you. Loss doesn't destroy you. Victory doesn't intoxicate you. You operate from an internal axis that does not shift based on external validation. This independence is unsettling to others because it removes leverage. People cannot control what does not need them, and when they realize they cannot control you, they adjust their behavior automatically. Now, we address pressure immunity. Most people reveal their weakness under pressure. They rush decisions, overtalk, overexplain, or emotionally collapse. You do the opposite. Pressure sharpens your clarity. You slow down, you reduce communication, you become more deliberate. This inversion of instinct is what separates dominant individuals from reactive ones. When others panic, you pause. When others demand answers, you provide fewer words. When others escalate, you de-escalate externally while escalating strategically. Pressure becomes your ally because it exposes who is weak and who is stable.
As your inner armor solidifies, you must master energy conservation. Power drains quickly when wasted on unnecessary conflict, emotional labor, or validation seeking. You stop arguing with people who don't matter. You stop explaining yourself to those who have already decided to misunderstand you. You stop reacting to noise. Instead, you conserve energy for moments that matter. This restraint compounds over time. While others burn out, overexpose themselves, and emotionally collapse, you remain steady, clear, and effective. Consistency becomes your greatest weapon. Another crucial layer is mental sovereignty. This means your thoughts are your own. You are not pulled into ideological traps, social outrage cycles, or emotional contagion. You observe trends, opinions, and groupthink without being absorbed by them. This mental distance allows you to move strategically while others move emotionally. People who cannot be mentally captured are rare, and rarity creates power. When you speak, it feels grounded, deliberate, and independent. Others listen because your words are not reactions. They are conclusions. At this stage, you begin operating on time advantage. You think in years while others think in days. You invest patience where others seek immediacy. You delay gratification while others chase dopamine. Time becomes your silent ally. Relationships mature in your favor. Reputations compound. Influence grows quietly. People who once underestimated you begin to reassess. Those who doubted you grow cautious. You didn't rush. You didn't announce. You simply stayed consistent while others exhausted themselves. This is how long-term dominance is built invisibly. Now we reach non-attachment to outcome, the final internal lock. You care deeply about excellence, but you are not emotionally attached to winning every interaction. This paradox gives you immense freedom. Because you are not desperate for a specific result, you make better decisions. You walk away when needed. You disengage without resentment. You apply pressure without emotional investment. Ironically, this detachment increases your success rate because it removes fear from the equation. Fear is the enemy of clarity. You operate without it. By now, your presence has changed fundamentally. People sense stability. They sense depth. They sense something solid beneath the surface. You are no longer loud, reactive, or eager to prove yourself. You move deliberately. You speak sparingly. You act decisively. Others adjust their tone, their pace, and their behavior around you without realizing why. This is not dominance through intimidation. This is dominance through psychological gravity. You have built a fortress that does not need walls. No constant defense. No explanation. No validation. You are difficult to provoke, impossible to rush, and dangerous to underestimate. The world does not need to know what you are doing or why. Results will speak. Silence will protect. Consistency will compound. This is inner armor. This is sustainable power. This is how you remain untouchable, not for a moment, but for a lifetime. Now we arrive at the final stage. The outward expression of the inner fortress you've built. You have mastered emotional armor, mental sovereignty, strategic unpredictability, and silence. You have trained yourself to become untouchable, unreadable, and self-contained. But true power extends beyond the self. It radiates outward, influencing the social and professional worlds around you. Those who operate at the highest level understand that influence is not just about being feared or respected. It is about becoming a reference point, someone around whom others naturally orient themselves. Consciously or unconsciously, people notice you not because you demand attention, but because your presence shapes the environment. They adjust, adapt, and act differently without ever realizing you are the force behind it. At this stage, your network dominance emerges. You are no longer the person who chases connections or seeks approval from powerful people. Instead, others seek you. Your reputation, built quietly over time through consistency, competence, and control, becomes your leverage. People understand that access to you is not guaranteed. They learn that your time is finite, your attention is scarce, and your trust is earned. This scarcity makes your presence valuable. They compete for it without you even asking. They respect boundaries instinctively because they know the cost of crossing them. You have become a node of gravity in every network you touch. Reputation control is your next tool. You do not broadcast your achievements or justify your actions. Instead, you allow outcomes to speak, letting your results create a narrative that others cannot argue with. Words are cheap. Action is immutable. When others see the consistency of your behavior, the decisiveness of your choices, and the calmness under pressure, they fill in the gaps themselves, attributing strategy, foresight, and power to your actions. They imagine layers of planning that may or may not exist. Mystery becomes amplified by perception. The more they try to dissect you, the more your presence solidifies as untouchable, as inevitable as something they must account for. This is also where silent leadership crystallizes. You lead not by being loud or visible, but by the energy you project. People follow not because you demand it, but because they feel the absence of your guidance would be costly. You inspire obedience and alignment without speaking. Others adjust their behavior around you because they sense consequences for deviation, not from threats, but from the invisible weight of your authority. Your influence becomes self-sustaining. Even when you step back, systems, relationships, and dynamics continue to align in ways that reflect your presence. This is the ultimate form of control, leading without appearing to lead. Finally, you become a reference point, a psychological landmark in the lives of others. Your actions, reactions, and silence set the standards by which people calibrate themselves. Your unpredictability keeps them cautious. Your consistency makes them trust your judgment, and your inner armor ensures they never exploit you successfully. People may not understand you fully, but they are forced to acknowledge your weight. They respect, fear, and even admire you, not because you demand it, but because you have earned it through mastery of self, control of perception, and command of consequence. You exist as a force they cannot ignore, a constant presence in their calculus of risk and reward. Understand this: reaching this level is not about cruelty, intimidation, or manipulation for ego's sake. It is about creating a life where you are no longer subject to the whims of others, where your boundaries are enforced without argument, where your time, energy, and presence carry inherent value. You move through life untethered from the approval of the crowd, untouchable to petty provocations, and free to pursue what matters most. You are no longer the predictable, over-explaining, emotionally available person who has been walked over all your life. You have transformed into someone whose presence demands respect, whose silence carries weight, whose decisions are final, and whose aura reshapes the environment around them. Remember the lessons. Do not seek validation. Do not explain unnecessarily. Guard your inner world. Move unpredictably, yet with purpose. Cultivate mystery. Balance fear with respect. Conserve energy, detach from outcomes, and operate with patience and strategic observation. And most importantly, let your presence results, and silence communicate what words never could. This is the culmination of every principle we've explored. A life defined by psychological dominance, untouchable authority, and magnetic respect. From this moment forward, you no longer live to be liked. You no longer live to be understood. You no longer exist for the comfort of others. You exist as a force, a presence, an untouchable entity whose influence is felt in every interaction, every room, every network you touch. This is the mastery of power. This is the ultimate freedom. This is the life of someone who moves through the world untamed, respected and unseen in ways that matter most. You are no longer ordinary. You are strategic, silent, unpredictable, and untouchable. You are the wolf. You are the force that others adjust to, whether they realize it or not. You are complete. You are free. You are power.